Well, it's my super pleasure to introduce Kim, but I think everyone here knows Kim or certainly knows of her and her astonishing work. She's just a terrific human being, amazing artist. And we're going tonight, she's going to give us a presentation that intermixes how she is so committed to change and then also to a really strong aesthetic and art practice and see where that takes us. And we're going to participate in this, especially now that eco art is finding its way more and more into the gallery, which is quite wonderful. Kim, has received fellowships from the J. Paul Getty Trust Fund, the Guggenheim quite a while ago, California Community Foundation. Her Pollock Krasner, her work is in MoCA, LACMA, Berkeley Art Museum, Brooklyn Museum, just wonderful places. She's having a slew of retrospectives and exhibitions, but she's just, as always, a really terrific person. So Kim, take it away.
Thanks. So I'll repeat again. Thank you for having me here. I love your group, and I love how dedicated you all are actually to not only art, but forming a community together is a very positive thing. This is a little bit different of a talk that I put together for you because we are going to go into breakout rooms at 7:30, and I'll just stop short on the presentation if it is needed to keep on time like that. What I really wanted to do was go over different strategies that I've done with working with communities. And so I probably won't explain pieces as much as I would have in a normal presentation. So I hope that's not frustrating. I hope you get something else out of it. So sometimes I'll move swiftly through these images also. So there's an idea about the participants also being the audience. And I think these paper people that I make illustrate this fact pretty well. In schools and some other institutions, I gained permission to collect the trash. In this case, it was from Harvard Westlake, and the principal allowed me to collect all their trash for a full school week, which would be 5 days. And then I washed and ironed and assembled into a figure that is scaled based on how much trash there was, in this case, paper trash. And as I said, participants as audience. So this is actually the stuff that the students had thrown away in the faculty, and now it's presented back again in their gallery. Similar thing I did up at Idlewild Arts Academy. You can see these little ones carrying this huge figure, and it was the same sort of scheme. And in this case, actually, the students actually saw me day and night cleaning and ironing all their trash. So it had this performative element to it as well. Some of you may have seen this larger one at the California Science Center. They had seen the ones that I had made in other locations and asked me to make them one. It's in their permanent collection in their ecosystems wing. And one of the scientists, Chuck Kopchak, suggests, I'm like, well, I could collect any day of trash. And he's the one that actually said, why don't you collect all the Earth Day trash? And it was really a great thing on a couple levels. People that came back any other time that you would remember if you went to the Science Center on an Earth Day, like for a field trip or something. And this particular one is 48 feet by 45 feet and hovers above. A very different type of project, but again, sort of participants and audience. Over 4 years, I went to a small town, West Bromwich, in the West Midlands in England, and I went 4 years, 4 different seasons, and I photographed their complete main street which is called the Golden Mile, both east and west sides of the streets. And because of the different seasons, weather changes. So sometimes people are, in shorts, and sometimes they have umbrellas or they're bundled up. And this is actually, for me, the best photograph. This is when that 120-foot long photograph was actually exhibited back in West Bromwich. And you can see this gentleman who happens to be the grandfather of these two kids, because I talked to them afterwards. He's pointing out things that he remembers from growing up in that area. That area of West Bromwich is a lot like Detroit, where it was very active when it had an auto industry, and then really pretty much collapsed after they stopped manufacturing there. So on the upper level is really the old town, and on the bottom, like on so many urban cities and towns, the bottom is all like retail and signs and kind of contemporary facades put up. So, some of you I know are interested in residencies, and I think some of you have also gone on them. They occur all over the world, and you can apply for them. There are a lot of residencies now you pay to go, and others, they give you a stipend and give you a studio and a place to live and sometimes feed you. And I did one in Montalvo Center for the Arts, and I knew that because I was there alone without my family, any trash I generated would have been my own. So sometimes projects really come out of a situation that is unique to my normal daily living. And so I collected all that trash, and I just was very determined to dissect, dismantle, and mince every millimeter of that trash. And it ended up taking me a few years to do it. You can see in the upper right image, I modified a paper shredder so I could actually put the plastic stuff in there to get small bits and then make paper out of it, so that I could then fold and weave all this stuff together to make a hope chest. So this piece is used as a sculptural prop that I take in, and I've performed it a number of times in different places, and I am using it to try to encourage people to compost. And the secondary thing that happens once I, dismantled all that trash that I had, really composted food was the last thing I had left in all that stuff that I had generated. And so that's when I started raising red wiggler worms. And so at the performances, I typically tell about the composting, but also hand out bags of worms for people that want to really do this more intense way of composting, but it makes the composting go faster. So charting is a big part of a general strategy for me. And I think in terms of often when I've worked in collaboration with scientists, the primary thing they often say is that they have the information, but they just never know how to express it to people. So, they make charts and other kinds of data and, volumes of text to explain experiments and outcomes, but the idea of making it visual is really not their specialty. And so that's why a lot of times they will admit that any kind of collaboration, art and science, is really helpful. Well, this one is a little bit different. This is probably more like urban planning, but this huge map that I printed on fabric and then hand painted, it color codes all the public space in LA County. And it's really this legend that accompanies that huge map that is the part that I think is more revealing. There are 5,000 color-coded poker chips cascading off that map, and they come down on recycled telephone wire that I opened up and then attached from the map to the poker chip, everything being the same color. And so if you look at the legend, it really starts bringing up issues about what is really a public space. And I think the thing is that artists have, odd ways of looking at things as we walk through the world. And for me, presenting something, I mean, this is basically a Thomas guide opened up, and people are very familiar with maps, but if you can then zero people in on understanding their world a little differently, like where are the parks and gardens? Are they, always around City Hall? Is an enclosed mall a public space, even though it's actually private? What's the comparison between jails and hospitals, since so many people we know are actually in there? So these kind of issues are brought up without hitting people over the head with it, so they can kind of contemplate it on their own time. Another charting piece, I located every tree in this area of downtown LA, which was pretty much my neighborhood. And there are 700 trees. They're 3 feet high. So the canopy of these paper laser cut trees actually hover over you when you're looking at it. But the one I was also going to pull out to show you, this is 1/2 of a diptych. And this map is then repeated in this one, where homeless encampments and their locations are located with illumination underneath them, and an opened up backpack that looks, a computer that looks like a backpack that's next to it, so that you can actually see what these encampments look like. And again, it's this idea, it's called signs of life. It's like, I know a lot of people have tents, but sometimes just a box, you can see that someone has lived there prior to that. And the relationship between the trees and these encampments became interesting, because primarily people put these encampments between buildings and where they can find shelter, not really where they might find the trees. A more recent project that I did are these very large native seeds. Oh, and I realized I picked the wrong video, so you can look them up yourself, I think. But they're on the Park to Playa Trail, and they're meant to use the idea of the trail as a journey for your life. And I think I'll pause on this one, just since I didn't have the right video I showed you. Sorry about that. I'm still installing this one. I wanted to bring forth for you a few public art pieces for a couple reasons. There are a lot of commissions out there available, and all the different agencies within, especially our region of Southern California, they're really eager to get new people to do commissions. A lot of the commissions are designed so that, for instance, some of the newer metro ones, they have a format where really all you give them is a digital image, and then they really have a certain way they want to fabricate them for outdoor use. So if some of you have questions after we're done, I'll be glad to answer. But basically what the agencies do at this point, they every couple of years they do a pool, a short list that you can get onto, and then when they think your work's appropriate for a commission coming up, then you'll be part of maybe 5 people that you're competing against. So they've made it really user-friendly for new people entering it. This one is actually on a private building, a mixed-use building in San Gabriel. and the leaves are about well, the smallest are about 3 feet long. They run to about 4.5 feet, and they represent trees, living trees around the world that are over 1,000 years old. So I wanted to really have a geographic spread. I purchased sky photos from photographers who have photographed at the site of each tree. So those skies are really specific to the tree, whether it's the Bodhi tree or the major oak. And in the legend for it, it tells the name of the tree, the neighborhood name of the tree, its location in the world, and again, with the photographer and how old the tree is. And then I made a narrative to go along with it. So part of the reason I wanted to pull this one out for you to see is that, there's the piece itself has a beauty to it. And then for me, there's always this opportunity to lend more information, as long as it's in a narrative form that might engage somebody, so that without letting them know it, I'm actually teaching them things. And in terms of the way we all feel about each other worldwide, and for me, something like an ancient living tree like this, and knowing that sky is seamless between us, is really a beautiful way to try to make connections between people in some kind of subtle way, instead of doing, hands across America. This one are the shoes of the civil rights marchers from a collection I found in Atlanta. Walk a Mile in My Shoes has a number of components to it. And I wanted to explain on this one that, a lot of times, any of our art really, but public art, because it's out there in the world, you really never know what's going to happen further. People walk by artworks daily, or maybe they just happen upon it because they happen to be in a neighborhood. Idris Elba and his wife happened to go by this piece of mine and were very moved by it, and ended up working with Louboutin to make shoes that said "Walk a Mile in My Shoes." And the thing was, they actually identified that's why they did the project, because they had seen it. And I would have thought it was kind of weird, except that all the money from the shoes that they sold, this particular style of shoe, went to several organizations to help people that were in need. A second part of this is at a mile from the first site. And this one, I photographed shoes of local activists. So it really runs the range. So, if you have in your heart that you might want to do a public project, they take a long time. You have to manage a budget. But on the other hand, then they're up forever. And they really, if you talk about things like community engagement, it really allows that possibility. Smaller pieces are another way that you can think about your work and then think of ways you can distribute it. So you can have patches made, stickers are another way. This one actually leads to my website, frugalworld.org, which is not only some of my work, but it represents work of other people that have done interesting environmental work through the years. And sometimes we set up at festivals, and we're not really trying to sell t-shirts. If we sell a mug or two, we're kind of lucky. But really what the purpose is, you'll see that chart on the left. It's to ask people when they're curious about what the heck this booth is about, to tell us how they got to that festival. Did they come on foot? Did they come solo in a car? Did they come by bus, and so on? Brochures and pamphlets, if you're at all interested in translating your work into something that can be handheld. It's pretty easy to do now, as long as you know a little bit of digital, and there are many places, even in our city, that can print for a pretty good price, and you can ask for recycled paper and so on. This workbook I did for a free clinic in South LA. It's designed so a little kid would be on one side with coloring that they can do, while the adult or their sibling are on the other side reading about the information. This is just the environmental activity book that actually is from 94 or something. I have done quite a few series of these tarot cards. They separate out into cards. They're bilingual, which I think is really important when you're thinking about doing printed matter as part of an art way of getting ideas out there. And so this one is on health. This was the first one that I did in 92, and it's actually gone through 3 different printings and updates with the information about HIV, AIDS, and safer sex. Okay, I'm looking at the clock here. Pieces that are meant to be taken into groups or classrooms. And this one is in the shape of the dolphin, and it's really used to teach people about the infrastructure of the storm drain system. For me, a lot of information that people need these days has to do with just understanding how their urban environment works. I mean, I think part of what I would like in our breakout rooms to happen is to think how your work already aligns with issues that may be important to you. These valises, there are 10 of them, I made with incarcerated women that are trained to be firefighters. They're in the prison is actually in the Santa Monica Mountains. And for 6 months, I worked with them, and they helped develop the content and parts of the piece. If any of you have thought to work with groups, one thing that I think is really important, that was emphasized when I worked with the incarcerated women, was they didn't have to work with me. They weren't getting a grade. They weren't going to get some time off. And so it made me realize how often I'm working with agencies where the groups somehow have to work with me. So what I did when I started understanding the situation and doing some self-assessment about it, I would bring up the materials and the skill sets, teaching and so on, and the women could actually work alongside me on their own projects rather than working on these. But slowly but surely, everybody wanted to work on them. So we ended up working with 80 women. Now, I don't know if this clock is right on my desk here.
Why don't you take another 5 minutes, Kim?
Okay, you're good with that? Okay.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
See. Small collectors, I think a lot of you are familiar with them. Basically, I use a stencil that I've drawn and cut. They're placed on a rooftop. The smog is very heavy with particulate matter, mostly from car, truck emissions and so on, but also, of course, from factories and other kinds of vehicles. But part of the reason I wanted to show you this in terms of what we're talking about, I hope today, is that this was really one of the first times with this work that I realized that it was so suited for working as a workshop with all age groups. These projects have been done. And so I do believe that almost all the work that we do has this potential to become something that can engage groups and let them start thinking, in this case, about the environment and the air pollution on their own by making a piece of work. And I've done workshops with this ever since I started doing the work, you know, in the late 80s. Summer collaborations like this one I did with the Garage Museum of Contemporary Art in Moscow. These are portraits of world leaders with their quotes in the language they presented them at world conferences and the environmental UN meetings, you know, the COP meetings. And so, you know, if you believe in art at all, you know yourself when you make art in your studio, how much you learn, not just about the materials, but about the ideas and the feelings and the issues and the tactile qualities and the politics. And so that when we do workshops with people with art making as a key component, then they are allowed that same access to the tactile quality of making art. These small collectors have been put, you know, in many places around the world. I love that Greenpeace had one in London. This woman I really want to mention to you, Rosamond. I did this project last year and she was part of it. Her daughter died of asthma attack, a severe asthma attack from walking back and forth to school in a very polluted area of South London. And what's so powerful about Rosamond, she insisted that the coroner put the cause of death for her child as air pollution. And as soon as I heard about her, I'll tell you this, she's my hero. She's got an organization now, you know, she's really is very involved with the government, trying to push them to have cleaner air sections of London. And despite the horrible loss of her child, she really realized that this became a powerful political issue that she would just not let go. So she allowed me to put some of the stenciled small collectors in her yard. And there have been city projects with this. Oh, good. Here's some kids doing it. And I don't know, Sandra, do you want me to talk about pearls a little?
You can. Sure.
Okay, because Sandra was very instrumental in the Pearls of Wisdom. You know, this piece, like some of the other pieces I've shown you, I still exhibit this. This was actually up in Fresno Art Museum up until a couple months ago, and then it will also be installed at Cal State LA at a survey that I'll have called Social Furniture that'll open in September. And this uses the pearl as a metaphor, you know, the irritant inside the oyster brings forth this beautiful gem. And the process is a workshop where people would bring in a symbol of their abuser on mylar paper, which is mirror-like. They would write their story. They would crumble it up and then wrap it with yarns and cords and then bandage it with the kind of plaster bandages used for broken arms and legs, and then use plaster and then paint it. And the thing I think that was successful about this project is that it was really challenging to do. This is kind of what people do in like beginning sculpture classes, right? You have to learn to use rasps and drills, and mixing plaster has a certain way you have to do it. So all the participants actually were also helping each other quite a bit. So the table shows the process. So when this is installed, you're getting the pearls that people made, as well as a real understanding of what that process meant. And after each workshop, we would go around and audio tape some advice to give to one's younger self or to another person who was in a similar situation. And here are three. And gee, I'll stop here because I do want us to be able to have conversation.
Thank you, Kim. We had one question come in. I know there may be others, but I just will go ahead and if you would answer this. Karina was asking, I think it was your new public art piece with the leaves, what in this project, how are you coloring the materials?
It's a process called alto. It's a dye sublimation that is then baked onto aluminum. And it's a place in Canada that I've used in a couple other projects where I've actually woven that same thing with image on like a thin aluminum. And this time what we were experimenting with, I wanted those leaves to curl. And so I wanted the image to be on both sides of the leaf. So when it curled, you still saw the sky.
Cool.
So, part of the fun I like about the public art stuff, I could never afford to do that myself, right? And I think that's the advantage of like biting the bullet and doing a project like that, like just get your brave self on, because then you can do some pretty interesting experimentation that, costs, thousands of dollars to do, right? One thing I want to say is environmental art, it's a genre now, right? I mean, it didn't used to be, but now there's so many exhibits and so on that no one would tell you don't do that as a subject, right? I think it's very accepted now as a type of art, and people approach it from different ways. And that's why I wanted to show you kind of a variety of approaches that I have had. The pearls, by the way, I put on there because the violence against people is the same thing as violence against nature. And I think that connection is very important to understand, right? That environmental work doesn't always have to be the leaf piece. You know what I mean? But it's also activism, because I think as soon as we start talking about nature, we really have to grapple with what's going on right now. So I have two particular questions I would like you to talk with each other about. I try to make them kind of specific. Ready? What do you consider to be your strength when it comes to interactions with people? Okay, so don't, hold yourself back. What's your strength when you're interacting with people? And the second one is, think of one of your artworks and consider a way that it could become a community-based social engagement. And kind of aligned with that, like what discussion or outcome could it generate?
And you may only start with one of them, but the whole, this is a fractal. When we all come back together, we'll have enough pieces of it that we'll start to see it. I think that will be it, because we could also be spending 3 hours together on each of these. They're wonderful questions.
That was fun. That was good.
Yeah, that was really fun.
I said that we're going to do this like I do it all the time. I realized.
You always want to do it, Sandra.
I always want to do it. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm at the control. Where's
So does anybody
Yeah,
want
we
to
had Kim. We had
chime in?
fun.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it a lot. Anybody want to chirp in? Like, oh, Sandra, you had a good question. Where did it go?
Is there something
What surprised you?
Yeah, what surprised you that either you said or you listened to that someone said? What surprised you?
I found it difficult to think about how to try and create a workshop that would address things that the thing that I'm really concerned with. It's hard enough for me. And then, I just thought if I have more time, I think I'll process it more, because it could be completely abstractly addressed. It doesn't have to be that people have to understand it. Because I find with what I do with my work, other people don't necessarily get it at all. They don't get it at all. But, it doesn't mean it's any less important to me.
Yeah,
Right.
maybe, because you're real content oriented with your work, Karina. And so maybe it's not so much a workshop idea, but how do you translate the things you've learned off your work to share with someone else?
Yeah, I think that
Hmm.
this is a really great exercise. I thank you again, Kim, for coming and speaking with us. I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of your talks, and every time I think she makes it look so easy. Right. And Karina and I were talking in our breakout room, and community involvement, I find the most difficult coming up with ideas. But we did, Karina, we did come up with a couple
We
of good
did. We did.
I guess I've sort of put my foot in it, so I'll share one of them. Why not have everybody or as many people as you can in your community maybe walk the path of the watershed where you live? I mean, I'm particularly interested in water, so that would be cool. Or because then they don't have to be artists, right? Or maybe people could lend photographs that they've taken of something beautiful, or like water. Or maybe they could identify, if you gave them a list of let's say there are sort of 7 kind of base native trees in Southern California, right? Like toyons and oaks and so forth. Maybe make it like a treasure hunt where people need to find them in their area. I don't know. That's sort of what we were chatting about. It's
Yeah.
hard. I find it really difficult.
This is good. Yeah.
Shelley,
So I want to share, Cindy and I were having a great conversation, and we talked about the first part, we talked about our strength, but then it led into, well, how does that strength lead into doing something with the community? And she started talking about zines. What she does is create zines. Do you want to show that, Cindy? I
Zine.
can speak zines. I'm like
Zines.
fascinated by this and how she is going to share this with other zine fest makers. And I mean, I didn't know anything about this, so maybe others know about it. I think it's fascinating.
I don't know either.
What are they
I'm
called?
putting you on the spot.
Oh, I missed what they were called.
Oh, zines, Z-I-N-E-S. I'm getting involved with this. It's kind of a younger movement, but it really comes out of, to me, the 60s and 70s, because it comes out of ways they used to Xerox and get information, political information was a lot of it. Some of it's still political, but it's also do it yourself. The idea is you get together. It's a lot of community, and I decided this year I wanted to get more involved with that community. And I think you just, like I said, it's a lot of them are 20s, 30s, but I, communicate well with them. I enjoy them. So I'm making some myself with the goal of being part of Zine Fest. But I think, it's a great, I also like them because like this sells for $5. $2, $10. So it's in some things you give away. So it's also trying to make it accessible to as many
Could
people.
you show it again, please? Could you?
Oh,
show-
well, I just made this on a residency, but I drew, actually this is copies fabric. I'm a fiber artist. I did drawings. I'm a poet, so I also wrote. There's me. But in the back, I did embroidery. This is for a show. So I did embroidery. So I just took the page that I had scribbled what I want to stitch. So you could kind of you can have collage. I do painting. I like because I can pull in really anything. And it's a lot of fun to do that. Like I just got the idea of, oh, I have this, I drew out, what I want to stitch and what they're called. I'm going to put that in the back page because it connects with the flowers. But this is about different aspects of me as the outsider, the pioneer, explorer, mystic. So hopefully people then will connect to who am I, kind of thing. But it's very community based, which
Cool.
is one
Yeah.
thing that appeals to me.
People would like to do that about themselves, like a little mini self-portrait diary,
Yes, good. Thank you.
neat.
Oh, there's a hand up, Susan.
Yes, thank you. So SWCA is actually going to be at Tar Fest on June 10th. We're going to have a table there, and we're going to have an art project of some sort to involve the community and the attendees to the festival. It's an art and music festival. So we need volunteers, but we also need an art project, something that's to engage people. So if anyone has ideas, you can put it in the chat. You can reach out to me. You can reach out through our Gmail account. And I was talking with Sean and Pam, and Sean was saying that she did something, a project where she made flags. She asked people to make flags. They're behind her right now.
Prayer flags.
So I was thinking, I mean, that's something we could do at Tar Fest. If we could somehow find, flags on sticks, and then everyone could come and we could have like tombos or some kind of markers, and people could write their prayers or anything with the environment on these flags, and then walk away with the flag. So we need help. We need volunteers.
Okay, Kathy?
I want to say something about that. I want to say about flags, that is a wonderful idea. Many, many years ago, my husband was part of a flag making booth at the Renaissance Fair. And it was always the busiest booth at the fair. People loved making flags, and it's a good activity for people of all ages. So I like that idea.
There's something I brought forward. It makes me think of this. There's always that decision. People can take it, but it also can be quite nice that they're making, like, to a mural or a flag or a mandala, whatever, something that it becomes larger as they add their piece. And it gives them the aspect of art making and building community. It actually illuminates that. And so if I would never take it away from, whether it's a 55-year-old that's attached to their flag or whatever. But I found when I did this once at Angels Gate, everyone had a choice to take their, palm frond away, their mandala, and they added it to the community piece. And that was, I think they liked the power of that. And so that's another concept, I think, to think of, the experience, but conceptually what you're holding people to.
Yeah, I at Hauser Worth, they did quilt blocks in connection with a quilt show they had, fiber show. And it was wonderful to see as they built the quilt from the community, what people had made. Because I came in and they'd done it for 2 weeks or something. And so again, it was people, most of them were not quilters, but they had the materials, but it was really cool. And it's going to travel to England or something, But Sandra, it was really nice to see what other people did.
Well, to see your
flags
piece as part of a community is cool, I think.
Yeah.
The thing with flags is that you can make them and add them to the community mural, the community thing that you're doing. And at the end of the day, if people want to take them, they can still take them.
Great
That's
idea.
what I was going to say, Kathy. Yeah. Or the end of the show.
The end of the
if it's-
show, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, in a lot of the projects that Kim does and in social engagement, a huge piece of it is documentation. Because often it's the documentation that comes into the gallery, the documentation that goes into the catalog. It's the documentation, not the whole piece, because the whole piece was somewhat ephemeral, but it can be, so that's actually, another kind of the mix and match of that. That's cool. Any other surprises that people, this is a wonderful conversation.
Well, I asked the group for help on how to bridge the gap between making an object, whatever the object is that the artist has made and puts it out to the world, and the interaction with people, because I would love to do that. I work on refugees. I've got an enormous piece that's going to be at Tar Fest, about 30 feet 12 big witnesses and a bunch of rafts and a lot of big physical objects. And I would love to get people involved with it. But what can they do? They're not going to go make one. They can pose for a photo next to something. They can read about the stories, but that's not, as wonderful as, people being engaged, like making an art piece themselves. And yet I don't know how to make that jump.
Pam, what if they left like a wish, like if you had like a wishing tree or a wishing well, and people could, color and leave a note for those who have perished or what have you, or for the, it's just a thought.
Yeah, I don't know that's
That's a
fine.
good idea, I think.
Okay, it's like, how do you bridge that distance between an artist who makes an object that wants to communicate to people, that is about people, and people feeling like they are not merely the recipient of that object, but they're a participant. And because that's what really engages people, if you've got an issue that you care about. And I have trouble with that. I mean, I thought of having people record their own stories, because so many people are migrants, or and then
That's why I was thinking about them leaving something behind.
of their stories.
Yeah, they could write something about their story, or they could write a wish, or they could even write their reaction
Yeah.
to your work, because your work really touches on some obviously highly volatile subjects. And so I think
your figures, it also makes me think of, when Priscilla Otani did her piece on abortion and whatever side you were on it, and she had the dress that were attached. I'm thinking of your figures, there's fabric, and if there's I've done others where it was really a simple thing, if there was just using colored safety pins and could hang it on a fabric that's something else, a wall of refuge or something, where I think sometimes giving them an unexpected material helps people so that they don't think that they are failing an art class again. and just something as simple as that, or a continuous, a black a ballpoint pen on sort of like yellow satin or something it looks gorgeous. I mean, there's really simple things, but I think fabric that could be continuous. I mean, I would play with that, where there's something, because what makes, when you said that, and the refugee, I always think in Buddhism, there's this phrase that you take refuge in the Sangha, you take refuge in the community. So that we think of being a refugee as if you're fleeing, and they're saying you're taking refuge, you're taking, you're leaning in. And there's some play there, I think. So that, because I think refugees are sometimes leaving, but they're also trying to lean in or something. And they're trying to, it's like birds don't migrate to leave, they migrate to go, to arrive. And maybe broaden the metaphor or something, but that there's so that they see themselves in that migratory space too.
the idea of birds is kind of interesting, Pam.
I'm not suggesting that I know how to do it, but I just, I think your pieces are so poignant. I think they are participatory, but in a really wonderful exchange with the object. I wouldn't.
But
Well, this is a pretty interesting question, Kim.
No, it's a wonderful issue. It's one I wrestle with all the time, because I want to bridge that gap, and it's very difficult, because as an artist, you make a thing, and then that is not about somebody else, coming in and drawing stuff on the thing you made.
No, no. you're not.
I don't look at your work as being so it's not that fixed. I think there's something.
Well,
There is
putting it
something
outdoors helps.
interactive about it. There could be something interactive about it.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. I don't want to take too much time, but
But-
I love the question, and I deal with it. I really
But-
deal with
but
it
Kim,
deeply because I don't know.
What I'd like to bridge here, though, is that having done like the pearls with Cam, so then she brings it and she weaves it, literally, she strung them together and brings them into the gallery. No one is making them in the gallery, but she's created, and I think your pieces do this too, Pam, in a way in which it makes you curious and you come closer. And that curiosity, to my mind, opens up compassion. So it actually is a momentum. And if you wanted to have something that documents that, but I think you've accomplished it in your work. Not every object does that, but I think in your work with those figures, it really is a community piece right there. I mean, you're not, you're not sitting there. It's not just a beautiful tree or something. It's very compassionate.
Yeah, you're literally having to walk around it. So
Yeah,
They're
that's
outdoors.
already physical.
Outdoors, and I want people to, somebody wants to hug one, they can do that.
Yeah.
well, there you go. That's good enough, isn't it?
Well, I
Thank
think we could go on a long, long time. Kim, do you want to close us out with any sort of?
Yeah, after
thoughts?
listening to all of you, some things did cross my mind. Just two things really. One is that working with people. Okay, no. Let me start over again. The idea of this is not to replace what you do. The idea of doing community or some kind of engagement is not saying, okay, now I'm not doing studio work, that gets put up on the wall and stuff like that. It's definitely not to replace it. It is to enhance it, for one. And also, if you even, attempt some of these interactions that have come up, with the brainstorming you were all doing, it's really energizing. And I think that as artists, like when we're just sort of limited to our studio practice, boy, that's kind of sluggish sometimes, if you ask me. And so putting yourself in sort of like it's kind of dangerous to work with people. You don't know what they're going to do or say, and I think that's really an exciting thing to energizing was the word I thought. And also it crossed my mind when Cindy mentioned those zines that, often kind of similarly with what I just said, the sense of play that is very important to not only art, but science or any of the fields of study, writing, all of it. Sense of play is sometimes something we just kind of push to the side because there's a level of seriousness of careers and resumes and topics that we may be doing in our work. So I think anytime you can generate a sense of play, maybe it doesn't get shown later. It doesn't matter. But I think kind of reviving that within oneself and not getting stuck in the head. Is this going to work? Is it not going to work? Like just try it, I think gives us the vitality to continue with our artwork.
Thank you. That was good. I like that.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you. Thanks so much for being here too. I really enjoyed the conversation and hearing you. It's really beautiful.
Thank
you.
Thank you,
Kim.
Kim.
It's fantastic. As always, you are just wonderful.
Thanks, Karina. Thank you.
Yeah, as we know you're always teaching, but I'm always blown away by the ideas that you come up with, the concepts, and then how you figure out how to make them work. I just like, what can you tell us about the process?
What's the potion, the magic potion?
Well, I always, I feel like I want to open your brain and figure out how you come up with stuff.
I'll tell you ideas, you guys can come up with ideas, but I think you're talking about the next step, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
how
what
do
I
you,
thought. Well, you know what? I think one thing I already alluded to, and Pam, you made me think of it when you were angsting over that. You know, if we get too stuck like on our note taking and our thinking like, oh, how would I do this and what it will work? I tend to really want to jump in and let the mistakes flow. And through those mistakes, the solutions come about, because if I get too stuck, I just get so anxious and all the beauty that the materials are speaking to you, you don't get that just by thinking about it, you know? So that's a big one for me, I think. And also a lot of the ideas that, you know, seem, oh gosh, really, am I going to do that? I just jump in, because I think the ideas that we're most afraid of are the ones that have the elegance that our souls are trying to get out.
Ooh,
Well put, well put.
yeah.
But I think more than anything, Kim, I just want to say to Shelley, you're always educating people. I think that the point of what I see in your work is that core of not only the beauty of the artwork that you create with a community, but how you're transmitting ideas and education. And I taught for many, many years, and you know, you're reaching people on a very different level where people have such buy-in to this. And I just feel like that this is so high-ended level thinking that I think what's, you know, what Karen was alluding to is like, wow, you know, you have this higher like process of thinking about transmitting ideas that is so mind-blowing. Like, it may seem simple, you know, like you were saying, wrapping everything, but the whole of what you do, all the pieces that you put together, I don't know how you do it, but it is
So creative.
amazing. And so,
So creative.
She's fearless in what she's willing to take on.
it's,
And I think most of us get, you know, like, oh, we just, like she's saying, we get scared. We're like, no, we're not going to be able to.
but there's so many different
Little
levels.
cameras and the
Yeah.
wall.
There's so many different levels to what you're doing. And I think I mean, when I look at that, I'm like, that's a huge scope. It's not only doing the lesson plan, but you're bringing everyone together. And then you've got all these little parts, and then it's going into a museum, and then it's educating people on another level, or it's going out in the world, and it's tremendous. So
Oh,
you're
yes.
amazing artists.
It's inspiring. You're
Yes.
very inspiring to all who are lucky enough to have contact with you. Really.
And Kim has an incredible aesthetic. I mean,
That's
the pearls, when they came back from people making them before they got displayed, they went to pearl school. I mean, they're you know, and the exquisiteness in which they get photographed, and there's everything that anyone would be in being intense around, you know, their aesthetics. She brings that to it. And my observation is you actually sometimes start experimenting in kind of a simple way, but by the time all this, you know, comes together, and then the concept and the diagrams, and she allows herself to put this together. I
It's
mean,
also wonderful the way the people work together and are engaged.
the people, but
I mean, I remember seeing your work from the prison, the women working together in Pasadena at the Armory Center, and just the community that is engendered from these projects. It's like ripples of water. You know, the impact, it's really special. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
And thank you everyone for opening to your own new ideas.
Yeah.
I think that's
No,
just
that was
really
It's been great
beautiful.
tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Before we go, Kim, thank you so very much. Sandra, thank you very much.
Yeah,
I want to invite all of you to join us Saturday, which is Earth Day, at Descanso Gardens. SWCA's meeting at 10 o'clock at the ticket booth at the entrance. Descanso Gardens is giving away native seeds and plants
Oh,
while
wonderful.
supplies
Wish I
last.
could be there.
And we're also going to have a bird walk and count. And our very own Ann Stork, who is a volunteer at Descanso Gardens and also a SWCA member, will be our
Fantastic.
docent. So please join us, Descanso Gardens this Saturday, 10 a.m. Kim, thank you so much. You're so inspiring, and thank you for sharing your experience. And Sandra, thanks for putting this all together. And thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
Great
Susan,
evening.
Susan, make sure you take photos.
Yes,
I'm already
I will all be
volunteering on
taking
another
photos.
Earth Day thing.
Thanks,
I'm
everybody.
going to stop the recording.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Kim.
Bye-bye, Kim.